Assalamu alaikum. Today, inshallah, we're going to share with you 3 secrets from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. I know this is not what you're expecting. You're expecting that we continue with the story of Zulkarnain, but we're still laying the foundation for the story of Zulkarnain. And this is extremely relevant information that we need to share with you so we can build upon it. And then, inshallah, we will continue with the story of Zulkarnain. We have 2 more episodes left after this one, inshallah, to cover the full story of Zulkarnain. So I welcome you, and inshallah you will stick with us all the way to the end. There is a lot of information, a lot of very useful information in this segment, and inshallah you will enjoy it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So we're going to cover 3 secrets. Nobody has told you about these secrets before. This is purely the results of this Quranic methodology, this divine ilm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed and that we are offering as a free gift to all mankind. And you will see inshallah for yourself, this is absolutely stunning. And inshallah you can use this information as your own private, secret tests to check if a translation or an interpretation is correctly guided or not, is leading you in the right direction or not. So these secrets are going to lead to 3 specific quick tests that you can apply yourself, whether you are an Arabic speaker or not an Arabic speaker. Inshallah, you will see for yourself that this information presents conclusive evidence that the Quranic language is built on top of the Abrahamic locution that is part of this Quranic methodology that we use all the time, inshallah. I remind you that this is a serious scholarly presentation. This is not for entertainment purposes. If you are not serious about understanding the Quran, please, this might not be for you, and please don't leave comments that you like it or you don't like it, because there's a lot of background that we're building on, and all the prior segments in this channel are contributing to the knowledge that we're presenting in this segment. We assume that you know about the Abrahamic locution. We assume that you understand that we use a Quranic methodology, that this is not opinion, this is not providing our own contribution based on what we think is right or wrong. This is purely based on interpreting the Quran, using the Quranic methodology, not using Quranic terms at random. All right, so we hope that you understand this, and then you'll continue with us all the way to the end. So we're going to get started, like I said, with 3 specific secrets that are revealed in the story of Yusuf, chapter 12, Surah Yusuf. So let's get started, inshallah. Test number 1. So ayah 23 talks about a scene where the woman supposedly invites Yusuf to her chamber, to her house, and she seduces him or tries to get him, as this translation shows, come unto me, right? This is the typical story. We've told you before many times this is the wrong story, but this is not the point right now. We're just making a specific linguistic test that we offer you so you can use it yourself. The verse 23, ayah 23, you see in this box right here, uses a word or a verb, rawadathu, from the verb rawada, right? So the Arabic word rawadathu has been translated as she sought to make him yield himself unto her, right? So this is their translation for the word rawadathu, this, the verb rawada, right? The exact same verb in Surah Yusuf, ayah 61, uses the exact same verb. This ayah 61 is about when Yusuf was unrecognizable by his siblings, and he asked them to bring another brother from his father next time they come. And they answer, سَنُرَاوِدُ عَنْهُ أَبَاهُ, using the exact same verb as in راودته 23. Exactly the same verb. سَنُرَاوِدُ. They said, we shall, well, what's the translation? Try to persuade his father to part with him. Well, what happened? It's exactly the same verb. How come you applied it in one way, which implies or hints at sexual type of temptation and seduction, and here has nothing to do with sexual seduction? Clearly, they're not talking about seducing their father. They're talking about trying to convince their father to do something, which is to part with the brother that Yusuf is asking for. And therefore, the verb rawada has nothing to do with sexual innuendo. Now the question is, where did the interpreters bring this concept or this idea from? And you guessed it. The minute they stepped into Surah Yusuf, they assumed it's exactly the same story that was presented in the corrupted version of the Torah, of course. Now, the translators, they just follow their suit. There is a complete agreement on this among all the interpreters, all the translators, exactly the same mistake. This is test number one. This is very obvious right in front of you. We're showing that if they had a methodology, the methodology should produce consistent results even if applied to different locations. All right, so that's test number one. Let's move to test number two. The question here is, what is a Rasul? What is a Rasul? And we all know that every single narration about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ starts with Qala Rasulullah, or at least the ones that are attributed to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself. All right, so let's look at Surah Yusuf again. I'm going to share with you 3 verses, 3 ayat, and we're going to see exactly how Surah Yusuf is so beautifully allowing us to determine exactly what a Rasul is, what a messenger from Allah is, right? Of course, in Surah Yusuf, it's not referring to the messenger from Allah, it's referring to the messenger from the king. But the term Rasul, which is used throughout the Quran, is exactly defined in this instance. All right, so in Ayah 43, the king is reporting about something that he wants interpreted. And remember, there are no dreams. This is not a dream. And we said this and we explained this in the video titled, What Was the Dream of Yusuf? In this ayah, the king is reciting his report. He's asking people to interpret it. And he says, سبع بقرات سمان يأكلهن سبع عجاف وسبع سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات. And you see it in front of you. And Yusuf's old friend from prison, who is a server of drinks at the king's court, happens to hear the conversation, and he offers himself to go to meet with Yusuf and ask for Yusuf's interpretation of what the king reported. Remember, this is not a dream. So take that idea out of your head. There are no dreams in Surah Yusuf. So when that friend of Yusuf goes to meet with Yusuf in prison, the report he takes to him is exactly verbatim what the king said. And Ayah 46 says exactly word for word. Now, the Quran is known for brevity. Even in the Surah of Yusuf, the story of Yusuf, it skips so many times, so many details in between certain scenes. And it lets you sort of fill in the blanks in terms of, this is not really important to the story, but you know that they went from this place to that place and you know what happened here. All right. So it skips over unimportant details. This, it did not skip. This, it made a point in the span of 3 verses to repeat exactly a very long report. سبع بقرات سمان يأكلهن سبع عجاف وسبع سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات, and so on. Question is why? Well, the answer is because 3 ayah later, it's telling us that the person who carried the report from the king to Yusuf, the Quran referred to him as Ar-Rasul. This ayah, number 50, these are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a narrator telling us what happened. قال الملك ائتوني به, the 2 words ائتوني به are the words of the king. فلما جاءه الرسول, this word الرسول is a vocabulary term given by Allah to describe the waiter, Yusuf's old friend from prison. So when he came to Yusuf, he said, etc., etc. Now, so this man, this person is described as Ar-Rasul. Why? Because he carried the message verbatim, word for word, with no change whatsoever. I hope you're getting the impression of what I'm trying to report to you here. So Surah Yusuf is full of such bayinat. Remember we talked about bayinat, meaning the instrument of how we extract evidence. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala includes in Surah Yusuf dozens, literally dozens, over 50 such bayinat, ways to extract information from the Quran. So Surah Yusuf is described at the very beginning, at the top, Ahsan al-Qasas. And I told you, Ahsan means it is best at safeguarding the truth and including insider information. Surah Yusuf is full of such information. Bayinat, instruments, tools that allow you to extract evidence. This is one of them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us these 3 ayat and saying, this is the role of Ar-Rasul. Ar-Rasul reports verbatim with no change, no addition. He did not add a single word. Alright, so Ar-Rasul only delivers verbatim. So what about Nabi? Well, Nabi is described in the Quran using different ayat. The Nabi implements, Nabi means prophet. Okay, Ar-Rasul is the messenger. And Nabi implements his understanding of the scripture. His understanding of the scripture. Yes, I mean it. Because Ar-Rasul does not interfere. Now we're going to see it. If you're not convinced, just hold on for a couple of seconds. You're going to see it. So An-Nabi implements his understanding of the scripture according to the circumstances of his time. So Sulaiman was a Nabi. He implemented his understanding of the scripture according to the times in which Sulaiman lived. Dawood alayhi salam, also the same thing. Zakaria was a prophet, also the same thing, and so on. The decisions by a Nabi, a prophet, during his life may be used as guidelines, but they are not sacred like the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Quran distinguishes between the role of a Rasul and the role of a Nabi. And this is like you at work, you have a role. At home, you have 2 or 3 roles. So at home, you could be a husband, you could be a wife, you could be a father, you could be a son. Every role requires certain limitations on your obligations and your rights. The same thing, at work, you have a role. You could be a boss, or you can be an employee working for a boss. And each role has its own set of governance. We talked about governance last time when we talked about Al-Arsh, Weltanschauung. So in your own Weltanschauung, you understand what your framework for operation is. For a Nabi, the Nabi operates within the limitation that he interprets. He does not add to the scripture. He interprets the scripture. What about Rasul? He delivers. You're going to see for yourself. Amazing, amazing results, and you're going to see. So, do you want proof on this? Umar bin Khattab, radiallahu anh, who came after the death of the Prophet ﷺ by 2 years. In other words, he became the Khalifa, the ruler, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the prince of the believers, the leader, the political leader, right? 2 years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, after Abu Bakr died. So he was the second caliph. During his rule, there was a major famine in Medina and surrounding area, the whole area of Hijaz. And some people were forced into some stealing, into some minor theft in order to feed their kids. And Umar radiallahu anh could not bring it upon himself to execute capital punishment on these thieves, so-called thieves, because he said this is an exceptional time. He could not apply what is clearly spelled out in the Quran and executed during the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he suspended the capital punishment of theft for circumstantial reasons. So Umar radiallahu anh, as early as 2 years after the death of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, understood that the decisions of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam during his life as a Nabi are not obligatory. They're an opinion that the Nabi as a political leader took, whereas Rasul just delivers. So let's continue. By the way, all serious scholars know this. I'm not saying anything new in here. Absolutely nothing new. Every single scholar who is worth his salt is aware of these issues. And not issues. These are well-known facts. So I'm just sharing with you but I'm providing you the Quranic evidence that nobody has provided before. Surah Yusuf provided us clear definition of what Rasul means. So this is why, if you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran clearly tells us that as a Nabi, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made his own decisions, and sometimes he guessed wrong. For example, when he went to Mecca with all the followers, all the believers, without arms, to try to go do Umrah in Mecca, and they were stopped and they were prevented from continuing at Hudaybiyah, and he had an opportunity to make a treaty with the Quraysh people, and then he turned back and went back to Medina. And a lot of Muslims and a lot of believers, especially some of the leaders in the community of believers, were very upset. So the question is, did Prophet Muhammad ﷺ know that that was going to happen? Of course not. Because if he knew that was going to happen, none of the big leaders in the community of believers would have been upset with him. So obviously this is a decision that was not based on perfect information. In other words, this is a decision made by a Nabi. A messenger does not make such decisions, does not make execution decisions. A messenger only delivers. We're going to see it. All right, so a second proof from the Quran. Sometimes the Quran laments Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, but never in the role of Rasul. The lamentation always comes in the label of Nabi. Ya ayyuhan Nabi, why did you do this? Ya ayyuhan Nabi, lima tuharrim ma ahallallahu lak. In his role as a Nabi, prophet, never in his role as a messenger. Not a single lamentation, not a single mistake was made by Muhammad as a messenger. Watch this ayah. So one last point before we present the evidence from the ayat of the Quran. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was ma'soom as a messenger, not as a Nabi. Now think about this a little bit. The messenger is protected and safeguarded from mistakes. Nabi could possibly make his own decisions, and as I showed you, some of these decisions are probably not fully based on perfect knowledge. So when we talk about Usma and Ma'soom, Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was Ma'soom as a messenger, delivering the message. Watch this verse. Ya ayyuha Rasul. This is from Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5, Ayah 67. Ya ayyuha Rasul. بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك. O Rasul, not Nabi, deliver that which has been made accessible to you from your Lord. وإن لم تفعل فما بلغت رسالته. والله يعصمك من الناس. And if you do not, then you have not delivered his message. Exactly, perfect. Rasul is connected and associated with the message. Nabi, execution. Nabi, you have to interpret the rules and take in consideration the circumstances and the conditions of society and the time and all sorts of other factors, and then come up with the best decisions you can come up with. Sometimes it's perfect, sometimes it's incorrect, and that's okay. But you're trying, you're doing ijtihad. So Nabi does ijtihad. Rasul, you just delivered what you're told. And if you do not deliver, then you have not delivered his message. And know that Allah protects you minan nas, from people. So you're protected and you're ma'soom from making mistakes. Only as far as the role of the messenger, not as far as the role of Nabi. Indeed, Allah does not guide those in a state of denial. Now I ask you, why do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala added this last sentence in this ayah? My interpretation, Allahu A'lam, is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us that those who claim certain people after Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam are ma'soom, are misleading themselves and misleading others. So there are some groups among Muslims who started approximately in the 2nd century Hijri. Pay attention, not before. They started making claims that certain imams are ma'soom. This claim did not exist. Historically, it was not known in the first 2 centuries approximately. This claim was invented after. So this concept of ma'soom, not even Muhammad as a Nabi had it. This ma'soom state is not for Muhammad as a person. It was a state given to Muhammad as a messenger. Period. End of the story. As soon as the message delivery was completed, meaning the revelation of the Quran was completed, and Muhammad as the messenger والسلام, completed the assembly of the Quran, there was no more ma'soom for Muhammad والسلام. Read the ayah. Wallahu ya'simuka minan nas. Why? Because you are Rasul making a delivery. After that, there is no usma, even for Muhammad. So how could you claim that there is usma for anybody who comes after him? Or even someone during his lifetime? You want more evidence? Let's look at these beautiful verses. We're still talking about test number 2, which is the concept of Rasul. And you'll see why I'm going through all of these details. There's a significant result, significant test that you will have at your fingertips, and you can apply to discern right from wrong in everything you receive through the Muslim tradition, the Islamic tradition. Ayah number 99 from Surah 5, Al-Ma'idah. مَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. A messenger is only required to deliver the message verbatim, as we saw from Surah Yusuf. And Allah establishes the evidence of what you expose and what you hide. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا تَكْتُمُونَ. Now, I want you to really stop and pay attention here. This is extremely beautiful, so powerful. Do you know why this last sentence is there? وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا تَكْتُمُونَ. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us there will come a time where someone is referring to Muhammad in the role of a Rasul and making claims about him that a Rasul should not be making, period. And you know that person is lying. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us this is how you distinguish between those who are hiding something wrong, who are acting based on something they're not expressing. Wallahu ya'lamu ma tubduna wa ma taktumun. So the first part of the ayah is giving you the key. You personally and me and every Muslim now, we have this key. So if someone brings me a report and said Rasulullah said this, what do we do with this? No, Rasulullah does not add a single word to the Quran. If you really understood the Quran and you're truthful, you would not use this sentence, Rasulullah said. You would use Nabiullah said. And Nabi said. Yes, that might be acceptable. So therefore, every report in our tradition, every report that quotes a companion or quotes a tabi'i or quotes anybody in the transmission chain saying, Qala Rasulullah, something is wrong in that transmission chain. Somebody somewhere is lying. It did not get to us pure. It has been adulterated somewhere along the journey from the word, from the mouth of the first person who said that to the time it was written in a book. It is impossible for someone who knows the Quran, who was really a close companion to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, to make this kind of mistake. مَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. So a messenger such as Messenger Muhammad would not add a single word of Sharia to anyone. Nabi, yes. Nabi, I fully accept it. And then I would have to add that this decision was appropriate for the conditions that surrounded that time frame. We cannot just take it blindly. We accept it. We learn from it. We see how he used his logic or he used his reasoning to come up with a decision based on something from the Quran. Yes, because he's doing ijtihad. But it's not sacred like the Quran. The words of a messenger are only the scripture that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. The words of a Nabi, ijtihad, period, end of the story. Anybody who wants to confuse the two is not giving us the truth. The Quran tells us this. Let's see other verses. You don't believe me? Continue. From Surah Al-Ankabut, number 18. وَإِن تُكَذِّبُوا فقد كذب أمم من قبلكم وما على الرسول إلا البلاغ المبين. So the last sentence tells us exactly the same thing. A messenger is only required to deliver verbatim, as we saw from Surah Yusuf, verbatim, the message verbatim as he is given. So why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala including the second part in the same ayah after telling us that other communities before you have lied? Because he's warning us, your community could suffer the same thing. How can you distinguish? This is the key. This is a secret. Look at it. Just open your eyes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, right here, I'm giving you the hint, the clue, the key. If somebody brings you a report titled Rasulullah said, and it's deviating from the Quran or adding something to the Quran, such as adding details to the stories or adding some new tashri' or making something that is clearly in the Quran abrogated, it's a lie. Impossible. A Rasul never does that. Nabi, yes. And then we have to understand the circumstances. So if you bring me a report that's truncated and we don't know the circumstances, then we have to ask, is this report valid for us? Is this something we should follow blindly or we should analyze it? Again, all serious scholars know this stuff. It's just that the population doesn't know some of these details. And we have these charlatans sometimes who speak in the name of Islam and want to present their own opinion, and they exaggerate. And that's unfair to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the message of the Quran, and to the rest of us who are truly trying to understand the Quran from its pure source. The third ayah that we present in this series, or this test number 2, is from Surah An-Nur, ayah 54. قل أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول فإن تولوا فإنما عليه ما حمل وعليكم ما حملتم وإن تطيعوه تهتدوا وما على الرسول إلا البلاغ المبين. They say, you see, right there, you have to obey the messenger. That means the messenger can issue commands. Let's read it carefully and analyze and see exactly what it's saying. So remember, the Rasul's primary mission, clearly from Surah Yusuf, is to deliver verbatim. So therefore, obedience to the messenger, Rasul, is to carry out the message forward, verbatim. And that's why we saw in an earlier episode where there is a hadith from Prophet Muhammad who said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً, deliver, exactly the same word, balag, بَلِّغُوا, at least one ayah. So that's the mission that we are to carry out forward and obey the messenger. Yes, because we're all sub-messengers. We're all required to carry out this task of delivering the same message to all mankind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tasked all of us with the same message, with the same responsibility, with the same mission. So this is what we are required to do. حُمِّلُوا, that means he's responsible and you are responsible too. Obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obey Ar-Rasul. But if they turn away, they don't carry out their responsibility, he bears his responsibility and you bear yours. Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is not responsible for your failures. You are responsible for your own failures. If you obey him, you shall be in a position to seek guidance. You shall be among the muhtadun, people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers truly seeking guidance. Now we learn a new condition for seeking guidance. You have to help deliver the message. You cannot just sit on your couch comfortably and say, I'm a Muslim, please guide me. No, it's not acceptable. You want to be among the muhtadun, you have to carry out the responsibility that Muhammad as a messenger, as a Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, carried and required you to contribute to it. So we're all responsible for this. And then it continues to confirm exactly what we're saying. And no, مَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. Only, messenger is only required to deliver. And therefore, if you obey the messenger, you're required to deliver. Period. That's it. This is obeying the messenger. The Nabi is never presented in the Quran as his opinions are final and everybody has to follow them. We will continue inshallah with test number 3. In the interest of time, we will try to make it as short as possible, but this one is a heavy duty one, and I need you to really pay attention. This is the concept of ilm, okay, the definition of ilm. Again, all of these issues are going to be important to build on when we go back to the story of Dhul Qarnayn, and when we go back to all the other stories of all the messengers and prophets that we're covering, inshallah, on this channel. So the question is, what does ilm mean? The word ilm in the Quran. Over 800 instances, occurrences in the Quran use the word verb ilm, alima. So what is it? What does it mean? The most obvious translation is knowledge, right? And if you look through all the translations, all of them, pretty much, they include this aspect of ilm, knowledge. So let's analyze it a little bit. The challenge with this word, the challenge with this verb, is that it occurs in about 8 different ayat, where the subject of ilm is Allah. Please pay attention. This is a significant issue. And you're going to be asked to provide answers on this, either from your children or your friends or your brothers or some, evangelists who are trying to mislead Muslims. They will use this issue, and they are using this issue. Ayah number 140. I'm not going to read the whole ayah and translate it. I just put a block around the word. وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. So that Allah, astaghfirullah, this is how it's translated. So that Allah would know, or would detect, or would discover. All of these has been translated, right? وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Those who believe. So that Allah would know those who believe. As if Allah's knowledge increases with the actions of people. Of course, it's wrong. The translation is wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not mean this in the Quran. And we're going to see. And again, this is a test. So I gave you the first test. Remember, just immediately look at Ayah 23 and Ayah 61 in Surah Yusuf, and you will see if they use the same, the different translations for the same verb, this is not right. They don't have a methodology. And the second test is about Rasul. And the third test, now we're seeing the word وَلِيَعْلَمْ. I'm going to give you all of these ayat. And by the way, you don't need to make notes. You can go to the description box and you'll find them. All of these ayat are included in the description box. As a matter of fact, the whole text is included in the description box. The whole presentation is included in the description box. So just pay attention, open your mind, open your heart, and internalize these issues because they are significant. All right. So, وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ in Ayah 140 of Al-Imran, we talked about this. The same expression, وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. This is, and so that He knows the believers. Of course, this is wrong. The translation is wrong. It doesn't say so that He knows. Cannot possibly mean that. And we're going to see it. In Ayah number 94, لِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَخَافُهُ بِالْغَيْبِ. So that Allah knows those who fear Him in His absence. Wrong translation. It's all wrong. But I'm just sharing with you the wrong translations so that you can sort of get familiar with the issue, how difficult and how challenging these types of translations are. Ayah number 29:3, the same thing. وَلَا يَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. Allah shall get to know those who lie. Of course, wrong translation. وَلَا يَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَا يَعْلَمَنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ. In Al-Ankabut 11, not 29:11, again the same thing. Allah shall get to know those who are hypocrites. Wrong translation, wrong concept altogether, wrong basis for even thinking about the translation. We're going to see. We're going to see also the source of this issue. Where did this issue come from? Ayah 25 from Surah 57, Al-Hadid. وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَنْصُرُهُ وَرُسُلَهُ بِالْغَيْبِ. And so that Allah gets to know or gets to identify those who support His cause in His absence, and so on. And then the last example, 28 from Surah 72, لِيَعْلَمَ أَنْ قَدْ أَبْلَغُوا رِسَالَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ. This is in the context of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides some advanced knowledge of ghaib to some messengers. We're going to cover it inshallah in full detail. The ayah says لِيَعْلَمَ أَنْ قَدْ أَبْلَغُوا رِسَالَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ. And the translation, wrong translation, says, so that Allah knows that they have delivered the messages from their Lord. So, of course, this is wrong, it's disastrous, it's misleading, it is not based on a correct understanding of what is Allah's knowledge. We know that Allah's knowledge is inseparable from Allah. If Allah is perfect, His knowledge is perfect. If Allah has no beginning, that means the knowledge He has, it has no beginning neither. If Allah is perfect and eternal, that means His knowledge is perfect and eternal. That means it does not increase with time. That means if Hani did some action, Allah knew about this since before time. There's no time beginning for it. So when I committed that action, it did not add to Allah's knowledge. So therefore, when we use the verb to know or to learn, it's very wrong. It assumes that Allah's knowledge increases. And therefore, those who did the translation that way have no clue. What does it mean to say that Allah's knowledge is perfect and eternal? And that's your test. So I gave you the list of verses. You memorize them. You keep them in a little piece of paper. Immediately open the translation that you're using, and you can immediately detect, are they falling in this trap? Are they translating correctly, or just absent-mindedly translating? Almost every single translation I saw fell into that trap and provided the wrong translation. Except two. I'm not going to say names. By the way, don't write me about your favorite translation or asking me to provide you a favorite translation. So these two translations I told you about succeeded. They provided a correct translation. The question now becomes, was their methodology correct? In other words, did they provide the answer because they had a methodology that led them in the right way to that conclusion? Or was it a lucky strike? In other words, when they are reading these verses, they thought to themselves, no, this could not be that Allah is learning, right? So they chose a different interpretation without a reason. So if they chose an interpretation that is correct without a good reason, their decision is wrong because it's not based on the right methodology. A dead clock, even a dead clock, can be correct twice a day. Doesn't mean it's a good clock. The process is wrong. So I don't care if one of their opinion or two of their opinions or 100 of their opinions are correct. If their methodology is wrong or they don't have a methodology, then I'm depending on their opinion. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept this. We're going to see. I'm giving you these tests so you are aware of what's going on and make your own decisions. At the end of the day, this is why we need to complete this project. We need to complete a new translation for the Quran based on the correct methodology for interpreting the Quran. But even these two translations don't provide the evidence for their correct translation because they do not have a methodology. How do I know this? Now we go to verse Ayah 1252, again back to Surah Yusuf. Even these two translations used to know to translate the exact same verb, لِيَعْلَمْ. So in Surah Yusuf, Ayah 52, the context is that Yusuf is about to be freed from prison. He's reported to say, everything that I asked for, which is the investigation of the women, and the king investigated them and detected that, yeah, surely Yusuf is innocent and so on. And then Yusuf says, ذَلِكَ لِيَعْلَمَ. He's talking about the king. That was for the king, لِيَعْلَمَ, to know, that's how it was translated, for himself, that I did not betray him. And of course, if you translated لِيَعْلَمَ, Allah, correctly, as I said about these two right here, these two translations, to make evident or God will mark out, then you should translate this instance of لِيَعْلَمَ in the same way. But these two translations failed. So they translated this verse, this ayah, so that he knows, so that he learn. Again, it's a dead clock. It could provide some answers sometimes, but other times it gives the wrong answer. because no methodology. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So the methodology forces us to say, what is ilm in the Quran? Where did the interpreters go wrong? Where did the translators go wrong? They went wrong because they relied on the traditional Arabic meaning of the word ilm. The poet's language says to learn. So they took that one and plugged it in. They never asked, what does the Quran mean by ilm? This is exactly the problem with no methodology. This is exactly the problem with relying on the language of the poets. It misleads your Weltanschauung. It corrupts it. And once you accept these corruptions and you take them for granted, then the angels are not obligated to come and do abrogation and debugging of your Weltanschauung. This is exactly the point. So what does ilm mean? It means to establish evidence for yourself and for others. So ilm literally means providing evidence. Literally, Quranic ilm requires you to provide evidence. So when you say that somebody is alim or somebody has ilm, don't use that word to refer to anything about the Quran unless that person provides evidence. And this is exactly why we keep saying on this channel, we don't say a single word, single opinion without evidence. This is divine ilm. Without evidence, I don't care who it is. If he's giving his opinion or she's giving her opinion, it could be right, it could be wrong. Without methodology, I don't have any clue if I should follow it or not. But with methodology and evidence, according to the Quran, as we do, then I can rely on it, I can trust it, I can at least engage it and entertain that possibility that, okay, it may be wrong, but at least it's based on something. And this is ilm, according to the Quran. So all interpretations that claim that Allah knows or learns are blasphemous and misleading. This is your test. And I gave you the list of ayat, and like I said, they're in the description box, you can go get them. So ilm means providing and exposing evidence. So you don't just make claims. Allah's knowledge is perfect and eternal and does not increase with time. This is one of the many disasters caused by the flat tafsir, what I call the flat tafsir, meaning the tafsir that's based on references from outside the Quran, assuming that the Quran is poetry. So when they assumed the Quran is poetry, oh, I know what the word ilm is. So and so used it in a poem, so I can go prove that this is what the meaning of the word ilm is, according to the language of the Arabs. According to the language of the Quran, it's a totally different story. I discovered over 28 different such keywords, I mean keywords of the Quran, that substantially change everything. In the case of ilm, it's used in 728 ayah, 854 times. All of these verses, all of these ayats are misinterpreted. They're not interpreted correctly. Even worse, what is the opposite of ilm? In the Quran, the opposite of ilm is hawa. So hawa is not just my fancy or my desire or my wish. No, it's any opinion without evidence. That's called hawa. And according to the Quran, according to the Abrahamic locution, hawa means no evidence presented. I want you to think about this. I know this is sad. I know this is scary. This is disastrous. It's calamitous. I don't know how else to describe it. And it doesn't give me pleasure to share this with you. But it's a wake-up call for the whole ummah. We have a lot of work to do. And we are no better than prior ummahs and nations who have gone astray. What makes us think we're better? We're not capable of making the same mistakes. Allah just showed us in some of the verses I shared with you that we are liable to make the same mistakes. These are 3 tests that we could use to apply to detect if we are taking from the correct sources. The Quranic methodology that we use covered dozens of such tests. I just shared with you 3. The Quranic methodology, alhamdulillah, allowed us to uncover dozens. I would love for scholars to join us. We need a lot of heads. We need a lot of sincere hearts to work on this and develop it. This is not the work of one person. But this is also absolute proof. Allah not only protected the text of the Quran, but Allah taught us in the Quran how to discern right from wrong. And these are just examples of some of the tests, like I said. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided something called hikmah. This is hikmah. This is your ability to detect acceptable from unacceptable, reliable from unreliable, questionable from possibly right, and so on. Please don't write in the comment section the name of your favorite interpreter or your favorite translator. These comments will be immediately deleted. They're against community rules of YouTube because they are considered marketing. This channel is not about marketing. This channel is about giving you the instruments so you can use them and reflect and apply them. If you are not a subscriber, please subscribe. If you are a subscriber, I urge you to click the red bell so you get immediate notifications the minute we release anything, and so that you encourage YouTube to promote these segments in front of other faces and other people. We have barely started. This ilm is huge, huge. We have barely touched the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more, and I'm so excited to share all of this with you, inshallah. We make the dua to conclude. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله لقد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق. I thank you for watching. سلام عليكم.